Greetings, race community. Brent coming in live with today's guest, Amanda Hopkins, who serves as Associate Vice Chancellor for Development at the University of Colorado Boulder. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Brent. I am so excited for this conversation. My 7-year-old is also equally excited.
Does your 7-year-old have any hard-hitting questions that they would like me to make sure that I surface?
No, she actually even asked what a podcast is, which at that point I was like, okay, we will just have to pause on that question. But she was just absolutely excited when I was talking about it last night. So
Well, I
looking
hope we
forward
don't
to it.
disappoint. I hope we don't disappoint. But I have to share, to the listeners, if you wonder, how does one get invited to be a guest on the Race podcast, or how does all of this happen behind the scenes? In this case, I was at the Big 12 Development Conference that TCU was hosting in May, had the opportunity to say hello to Amanda, or in fact, she said hello to me and mentioned that she really enjoyed the Race podcast, which just makes me so happy, because here's the thing, we really pride ourselves on metrics and data and tracking and attribution and all the things we're trying to encourage advancement shops to embrace. But the least measurable thing we do is the Raise podcast. And the only way I really know that anybody's listening is when people come up to me at conferences, which happens from time to time. So thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, I will say, Brent, I'm probably one of those listeners when a guest says, please feel free to reach out at the end. I sometimes do. And I've had some great intros that way. I've met some great people, I've learned from them. And so I think there's just the element of the community, advancement community, willing to share their ideas and help each other, that I have found so tremendously helpful from your podcast. I just want to say thank you for that. And I am equally honored to be a guest. So I look forward to it.
Well, let's get into your story then. As you know, I love asking people, take me back to junior year of high school. Who was that, Amanda? What was she into, and what led you to Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida?
Yeah, so Brent, I do need to take a smidge step further back to kind of just describe my upbringing to give context for 11th grade. So I am from a farming family who was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago. And so I grew up farming. And so kind of work ethic and responsibility was just ingrained at a very early age. And so in 11th grade, I would say the things that Yeah.
I'm not going to let you skip through that now. Tell me, where were you farming specifically? Were you in Trinidad and Tobago, or it's more that's the origin story of the family?
Oh, yeah, no, we were farming in Trinidad and Tobago. So I grew up on a farm. My parents would get up at 3 a.m. in the morning. I don't think they asked us to do it at that early of an age, but we definitely much of our chores included being on the farm and doing chores after school. So, yeah, I grew up in farming in the Caribbean. So, responsibility was huge at an early age. And so 11th grade, I was a couple things, right? So academics was like primary, number one thing. Getting into college, so focused on, where am I going? I am first generation, so I needed a bit more help and structure to even figure out what that looked like. My parents owned a small body shop business, and so I picked up a side gig detailing cars for my friends from high school. So I was known as the person to go to if you wanted your car detailed.
I'm frustrated that I didn't do a pre-call interview with you. We like to just kind of wing it and have an organic conversation. But based on everything you've shared at this point, I wish I would have asked you to prepare a PowerPoint that you could have screen shared as you went through this part of it.
That's funny. Thanks for not asking for that, because I probably would have done it. But and then I played basketball. So I was on the varsity basketball team, a shooting guard. Growing up in the 90s when, the basketball is life shirts were out and one. And I watched college and professional basketball equally as much as I was eating. So basketball is life. I wore those shirts like constantly in high school. So I mean that was me in a nutshell. Yeah.
And so, I mean, amazing. Thank you for taking us back and not just jumping into 11th grade. And so how much guidance were you getting? Support? You mentioned being first generation. I'm a first generation farm kid, very different setting in Northeast Iowa than the Caribbean, but just like, how did you even start to narrow the scope? Was basketball recruitment a part of the experience at all?
So I was actually fortunate. My sister is 4.5 years older than me, and so she went through the process before I did. My parents, I mean, both of them kind of instilled in us like, whatever you set your mind to, we will figure out a way to make that happen. You just need to work, you just need to do your part in order to make that possible. And so she kind of forged the path of what I needed to do. So going into the guidance counselor office early was part of that. In my parents' business community, there was someone who became my mentor. I still meet with him and talk to him. And so he actually talked yesterday, but he helped me kind of navigate
What's
just
his
kind of
name?
the,
What's his name?
his name is
Because
Jim Hartman.
I know you can listen to this.
Yeah, his name is Jim Hartman, and he helped me navigate. He helped me navigate Rollins College, and so he was part of the reason I even looked at Rollins College. So I think the foundational elements and why I'm in higher ed work now is if you have a mentor, if you have folks who can help show you or guide that path. So much of the research shows that one-on-one relationship helps in college. And so I was able to be a recipient of, in high school, mentorship and just guidance counselors who kind of helped me navigate that path, and just committed parents who were willing to work however much they needed to for me to go to college. So I'm grateful.
I love that. So tell me about the transition to Rollins. Was it sort of totally natural, challenging, somewhere in between?
Yeah, so I was actually slated to go to a larger university. I won't name that one. And then I got lost on the orientate, like the first day, not it was during like registration. I was supposed to go register and I was lost for 2 hours. And I remember calling my mentor and I'm crying. I'm like, I just am lost. I don't know what I'm doing. And so it was just that was kind of like the transition from maybe let's look over here. And so the first year at Rollins, Rollins is a small liberal arts college in Winter Park, Florida. Lake Virginia is kind of part of its boundary line. And so it's a beautiful campus, small classes. I was, English 101 was, maybe 11 students. And so there was always a knowing people knew who you were. Your teachers knew if you didn't come to class. Like there was always an element of not getting lost because of how small it was. Equally, though, I was having a hard time finding my place. And so it was in my first to second year, I found my college mentor. Actually, she found me because I was just, one of those kids who was just walking down the sidewalk, probably with my eyes down. And she pulled me aside with another faculty member. And I think that was kind of what helped like totally change my trajectory from an student experience. Academics, I was fine, but like the student integration and like trying to find my way and my place, it was through her and that interaction that I, got into. I ultimately, as I look back at, my 4 years, by the end of my 4 years, I'm on the SGA. I'm, the community service chair for the SGA. I'm in a group called the Cultural Action Committee. I'm president of the Caribbean Student Association. Like I'm doing so, like I became so like no longer walking with my head down. Like I knew where I was, I knew who I was. And so I love to say for me, Rollins is the place I found my passion and my purpose, because who I am as a leader, I definitely formed a lot of those components of that in my 4 years. So definitely an integral part of my education.
Well, what's amazing is we're not even through your college journey story yet, and you've already reinforced like the number one theme that we have heard in this podcast over and over, which is mentorship, and just the
Yes.
way that like one or two people at the right moment in your life we always kind of make the Back to the Future comparison where it's like those are the inflection points where sort of everything changes. And it sounds like that's been a huge part of your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so tell me about trying to go from the liberal arts small college experience, farm in the Caribbean, to starting to shape a professional direction. You mentioned your mentor sort of helped there as well, but I know law school is a part of your journey, which is not all that common among folks who I've interviewed so far.
Yeah. So, I was from an early age, I said I wanted to be a lawyer. And so that kind of stuck through most of my life. And so for me, going to undergrad was just like a step to law school. So I was always committed to that journey. And so going to University of Florida, which as I think of the two types of education that I got, was foundational as well, but in how I have become, in what and how I lead, right? So those elements is foundational to those elements of my leadership. And so going to University of Florida for me was, it was the most rigorous experience that I think I will say I have ever had in my life. It actually helped me see, the delta between what I think I can do and what I can do. And so it really like pushed me to a new level and a new bar. There was a time in that journey that I think I called my parents, and because Gainesville and Orlando is like 2 hours tops away from each other. It was probably my first year when struggling with what does consideration mean in contracts as an example of a term where I'm like, what does that even mean? And I call my parents and I tell them, I was like, I don't think I want to finish law school. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And, my dad has always been the person who has said, education is an asset that no one can take away from you once you get it. He's always told us that, like, that becomes part of who you are. You don't lose it. It just continues to become stronger in who you are. And so I remember, I hear the story from them, not from, from the standpoint of, they they left work that evening and drove up to Gainesville to check on me because quitting law school is not an option is pretty much what they were telling me, but they didn't say it in that way. They came to me to make sure I was okay, got me back up and running, and then they went back on their way. But I must say, like, for me, law school was an intense component of my life, but it's not something I would ever change. I loved University of Florida for all the reasons. I mean, just the energy and excitement. I was there when Tim Tebow was there. I was there when the basketball team was winning, the football team. So there's an element of just my chapter that I look back on fondly. But just the rigor that is required to get through law school has been essential to me really taking challenges the way that I do now and kind of remaining, even keeled, so to speak, as I go through them. And so, yeah, law school was intense, but rewarding.
Well, I think, based on what I've heard, the only thing harder than law school is in that path is actually being a first year associate. So you went and did that too.
Yes.
And you went during a really unique time, which is essentially on the cusp of or the beginning of the financial crisis, which I know was complicated everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I practiced for about 3 years. I'm still licensed to practice in the state of Florida. I still keep up with the law firm I practiced with, great colleagues of mine. And so law has remained a very key element of my life. I think a lot of people might assume, well, she just transitioned out of law, she kind of left that behind. No, I still read Supreme Court cases. I still pick up law publications. I still do a lot in the space. I just don't practice anymore. But I did contract, secured finance, and commercial real estate. And so what I learned in those years, which was, as you mentioned, in terms of the Great Recession, it was a challenging time to be in practice. But what I learned then that I now reflect on is that the way that I learned in that time that my brain works is very much kind of connecting the dots. And I now call that a systems thinker, but I connected the dots, and I was also realized in that moment that I didn't have a fear or aversion to kind of big challenges or a large amount of money. Like I remember there was like a quarter where, a month where I needed to close 7 deals in that month, and I tabbed them all up and it was 45 million. I was like 26, 27, and I'm like, yeah, this is fun. Like the adrenaline rush and excitement. I was like, something must be wrong that I'm not scared about this, is what I told myself at that moment. But I realize now the grace under pressure and the challenge part of what that taught me, and the fact that my brain just enjoys the connecting of dots, is what I pull from that time in my life, and I bring it forward.
Well, there's a lot of connecting of dots in the advancement sector, and it makes a lot of sense that you moved into advancement by way of gift planning. But tell me more about what the spark was to do that, and then just the intersection of legal structuring and gift planning is something I've learned a lot about. But please share for our audience if sometimes folks are wondering, what are they doing over in gift planning?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the natural segue and place that I found the most comfort in advancement was gift planning. The ultimate transition from practice into higher ed was through my undergraduate alma mater, Rollins College, where I was able, through serving on the alumni board, was able to learn about the opportunity, and really had to, at that time, the Great Recession, we were in that space, and I really had to think about, what do I want to do every day? Do I want to now move into litigation, which is what I would have had to do, or do I want to do something that I'm more passionate about? And so I really had the opportunity to explore the role within at Rollins from a fresh kind of like a level setting, like new chapter. What do you want to do? And so what I was excited about in gift planning was the ability to kind of take a lot of just the transactions component of what I was doing, commercial real estate and finance, and the type of clients I would normally meet in that space, and what they care about, and what I know that they are thinking about from a client perspective, and translate that into, okay, now I get to do this for something I am passionate about, which is my undergraduate education, and really align their, what they need to accomplish in their philanthropy through gift planning with what the college needed to accomplish from a fundraising standpoint. And so I was having a blast. Like for me, that was like a sweet spot where no day was the same. And I got to do, a type of fundraising that aligned with my skill set.
Any particularly creative or unique gift structures, things you pulled together that are a reflection of that? I mean, it's sort of like a sky's the limit in gift planning relative to maybe some more standard, right, 5-year pledge agreements that you might find.
Yeah. I mean, I think now at CU, and I know I'm kind of fast forwarding, we see a lot more of the gifts other than cash options, right? So real estate, and different life income arrangements. I think when I first started in this work, what I was excited about was the trust building that needed to be in place, obviously for all types of gifts. But I remember working with a donor who brought her entire, like her whole will, like her whole books, all of her books to the meeting. And I'm like, I was shocked by that, but I realized it wasn't that she wanted me to give her advice, because obviously I can't do that, but she trusted me enough that she wanted to make sure she was speaking accurately about what her estate was made up of. And so I honestly have enjoyed in the gift planning realm the conversations that are tied to their entire estate. Because to me, that requires a level of trust and belief in what we're doing here. That's the only way someone would be willing to turn over their entire estate. So while I have done a lot of complex gifts of real estate, of other types of property, I'm most excited about those conversations where the foundational element needed for it to even get to that point is a level of trust.
I love that. And it's one thing to try to build that trust at your alma mater. It's another thing when you become call it even more professional fundraiser and you're raising money elsewhere. And so tell me about the transition to Boulder.
Yeah, I appreciate that question because when I ultimately made the decision that is a good time to leave my alma mater, I had to really, for me, the why I do this work is what I wake up having to remind myself every day, right? If there is not a clear why, you know, I think that you hang it up at that point. And so access to education, because of my lived experience and because of what my father told me about education being an appreciating asset that no one can take away from you, for me, I realize higher education is the place I need to, that's my why, and access to higher education is my why. And I really wanted to see what does it look like to do that at a public, at a R1 university, large institution. And so when University of Colorado became an option for me, ultimately it was through connections that I met Katie Kotlarczyk, who's our Vice Chancellor. And she's the one who hired me into the role that I got into when I came here to CU. But I really, the translation between private to public for me was very much connected to access. And making sure that I do that for students, both in private and in public.
And you joined at what has obviously been an incredibly exciting time for the university as far as just overall momentum, right? And brand awareness and all of those things, that it's sort of this lightning in a bottle moment, but also, built on a really strong foundation and many decades of work. And I guess at the same time, we're like a lot of what you're sharing, I believe deeply too, right? The asset piece, appreciating asset, can't take it away. You hear the impact stories, right? I mean, constantly, it's amazing. And then the public narrative writ large is so the opposite of that, right? It's student loans and AI is going to replace everything and we don't need higher ed. And it's just such a disconnect right now where, like, if you're in it, you're near it, you feel it, you see the examples, you're telling the stories constantly. And then there's just this polar opposite view that is, it's really, I don't know, it just feels like it's getting more and more disconnected.
No, I mean, I think that has been the perception of higher education not being needed, and that kind of percentage of folks who believe in higher education continue to decrease, has been I mean, it should be an awakening moment in higher ed, right? Because there's an element there that we have to listen to and challenge our own assumptions around, like, what have we been showing our value proposition? Have we been doing our part? And so honestly, that's how I choose to look at it, because I think there's elements there that's just white noise around there. It is what it is, right? If those percentages are true. That said, I have two kind of branches that I usually think of when I hear that. Is one is absolutely we need to see how AI will will change or evolve the need for many things, not only higher ed. Absolutely, we need to make sure that we show there are many ways to be successful coming out of high school. There are many paths that you should take and can take and still end in a space of success. And we need to highlight and show all those ways. And I think that is important to the narrative. And I think in the higher ed space, so we have a responsibility and an accountability to show our value and to show how we're making how it is affordable, right? Like, so just demystifying the cost of attendance, and we're doing that here so that folks can see that how much does it actually cost? What are the ways I can get to as any particular university or college that isn't that makes it affordable for me. So I think in my mind, we all play a role that we need to acknowledge, and we need to find space and place for the things that are disrupting it, because some of those things we have to adjust to make room for.
But against that broader backdrop, you are at UC Boulder, which is experiencing record applications, record enrollment, record student retention. And so it's sort of the opposite of any of those challenges and constraints that you'd hear, or critiques that you'd hear. It just feels like you all are in this like just amazing moment. Now it's easy, right? When you're on the outside, it's always different when you're on the inside. But just tell me about your experience being a member of a team, a leader within an organization that relative to higher ed more broadly is a rocket ship.
Yeah. I mean, I think I appreciate you saying that, because there's a lot of exciting things happening here, and we are grateful for that. We have a bold new chancellor who is like not only ready, doing a lot of great things to position us and kind of put flags out there around sustainability. As one example, we're about to celebrate our 150th anniversary next year, so we're getting ready for that. Sundance is coming to Boulder, so there's energy and excitement there. And we're in the pre-launch phase of our first comprehensive campaign, and so it's a culmination of not only bold thinkers and leaders, but also just timing of milestones, obviously, but also the work that's been happening here. We are putting that out on the national stage in ways that we've talked about, and now we're doing. So I'm just excited. It's just a confluence of a great activity happening across the university.
Well, look, people like to be a part of a winning team, right? People like when their institutions are moving in the right direction. And so I'm curious if you see that general enthusiasm and momentum, if you see that being realized in event attendance, in appeal response rates, in people's willingness to just take a meeting with a frontline fundraiser, gift planning. Like, how do you sort of, because you could also have all that momentum and not convert it into actual relationships, right, conversations, opportunities, proposals, gifts. And so, one thing to have the momentum, another thing to realize the potential.
Yeah, and I will definitely end in that space that you're describing, because we are tracking much of that. But I think it's important to say, as a university, we're seeing an uptick across just you mentioned admission and enrollment, definitely attendance. In terms, there's just a lot of increases across the university related to just the moment in time we're in. And so I acknowledge that we're just in that space. Within the fundraising and engagement space, we are tracking and we are seeing upticks. And so what I'll point to as like the most clear uptick is this past year. Our fundraising and engagement results this past year, both record setting. We set a new record in terms of our fundraising numbers this year. We raised, $229 million, first in this campus's history. When we look at the reasons why we got there, it was over 3 years, right? So I think it's always important when I answer this question that we don't look at just a moment in time or one thing. There were many things that we can look at that we attribute to the success. We've definitely spent some time reflecting on those things. Happy to share it, but I just want to acknowledge that for us this year and what we've seen in our records is we attribute that to a lot of great work over the past 3.
I love it. So tell me just about the focus of your role today. You mentioned that there's a campaign around the corner, and just on one hand, there's clearly so much momentum, but there also it's like momentum creates a whole new set of challenges, which is, and we've talked about this a little bit through our engagement, just the amount of engaged, passionate, philanthropically inclined people sort of hidden in plain sight that are just not yet really in that one-to-one engagement level is, it's kind of overwhelming to even think about.
Do you mind repeating your question? I just want to make sure I didn't miss it.
Yeah, just how do you, and we'll edit this out, we'll clean it up a little bit, but just the momentum creates a whole new set of challenges, which is there's just this massive audience of people out there who are raising their hand, they're engaged, they're interested. How do you get to that community in a personal way? And obviously we're trying to explore, that somewhat, but it's broader than our engagement.
Yeah, no, I think, one of the areas that, for us over the past 3 years, we really focus on a few key areas. The one that I will describe in response is, we identify the need to make more, have a team, it's called our data insights team, really be future facing for us and help us kind of whittle through a lot of the volume and really focus on like what are the areas that we need to be focused on next. And so when I think of how we're doing that in the fundraising space, definitely within the space of how we've decreased our portfolios. They're really focused on identifying the within our fundraising space, the right individuals that we need to be visiting with right now. We've definitely taken the David Lively approach to our portfolios. And so we have, that is one way that we're kind of, for lack of a better word, like whittling through a lot of the volume to just make sure we focused on the right thing for right now. Within the engagement space, we have really looked at the individuals who show up as maybe less engaged. And we're doing marketing campaigns, we're doing focused engagement opportunities to really get to those individuals, whether they show up as philanthropic in this campaign or not. That's not the end goal. It's more so we first need to engage them meaningfully with the university so that in the future, likely in our next campaign, those individuals might be interested. And so we're actually really distributing both the engagement and the fundraising work in a way that we're focused on the right people for the right time, so that we can continue to build out that pipeline. And with the introduction of EverTrue for our DXO program, we're really excited to see the opportunity that provides in building our pipeline from engagement to fundraising. And so our annual giving team is really helping and kind of shepherding us through, what does it look like now that we have these smaller portfolios, where they are focused on, our DXO team is really focused on the larger portfolios to help us, kind of build the pipeline from annual giving to major gifts to ultimately, hopefully, principal gifts if it makes sense.
I have tremendous respect for David Lively, enjoyed the opportunity to host him on the podcast and have seen him at conferences and so forth as well. And I'm encouraged to hear your perspective, because I do think like one of the challenges that we sort of talked about and identified was that as portfolios got smaller, it just meant fewer and fewer people actually had. So like absolute dollars unequivocally grow with the focus around the small portfolio model. But, those are people that are being pushed out of the larger portfolios. And I think having something like the DXO concept to go deeper into the giving pyramid, I'll be less maybe personalized than you might see at the top of the pyramid is a really good sort of compromise.
Yeah. And I think what I would add to how we're approaching this work is, our stewardship program is integral here, right? So that we don't miss anyone in spaces and places of acknowledging and thanking and stewarding them. So we're really focused in there and making sure all of our donors are thanked for their gift and all of our donors receive some level of of stewardship for their giving. So there's elements where we're trying to make sure we're not missing any pools or gaps, whether it's through our DXO program or our stewardship or engagement work. Nothing's perfect, right? So we always find ways that we, need to refine or improve over time. But we feel as though this approach helps us kind of get through the excitement and the momentum that we're describing. It helps us kind of see a path where we can remain focused and doing the work that's needed in order for us to meet our ambitious goals.
So we spent a lot of time talking about ways to more scalably, right, engage people deeper in the giving pyramid, but you've also spent a lot of time in the most call it transformational type conversations, and you shared this idea of a visioning session with a family around philanthropic priorities. I have never been in the room in a visioning session like that. Some of our listeners have been, but I'm guessing most haven't. And so just walk us through that concept. Like, it has to be some of the more poignant memories, I would imagine, and just what stands out and what can we learn?
Yeah, I mean, I think the exciting part is within our Principal Gifts program, we do visioning sessions with either donors in mind or with university priorities in mind. It just depends. And so for, the past few years, we've been kind of doing those visioning or ideation sessions. We kind of use the word interchangeably, so I'll try to stick with one for this conversation. We do those mostly with our academic partners in the room, and we're really trying to hear the relationship manager's input around what that donor cares about. So that's how it's been done. That's exciting. It's usually a bunch of academic partners from across the university in some cases, and we're really dreaming about what we can do in this space and how we can leverage philanthropy to cut down the time, as Mike Andreessen said, between thinking about the thing and actually having the impact, right? So I love when he said that, by the way, so I use that a lot in our space now. But this was our first opportunity. We had a donor who wanted their family to be a part of a session. She heard about him and she was like, I think it'll be great if me and my family did one of these with you all. And so it was an opportunity now for us, in first time ever, to what does it look like to do that, what we would normally do with academics only, but do it with a multi-generational family with the academics in the room. There's a lot of risk with doing that. Like, you can think of all the reasons why people would be like, that might not be a good idea. You don't know all the family dynamics. You might walk into something and it's like you're in the moment and you're walking into it. The other side of that is, the academics. Sometimes the ability to remain neutral around, they're passionate about their thing, so they're wanting to talk about their thing. Like, all the things can go wrong, right? But we did it because we're kind of for us, we're not afraid to try something new. And so we decided to go about doing this. I facilitate these sessions, many of them. So I facilitated this one. And I would say the things that, let me describe what happened in the room, right? Was we were able to hear from a family about what they how they're the generations of family who either went to CU or lived in this area. So we learned a lot about their family history and story. We learned a lot about their lived experiences that informed their values and which values they want to tie to philanthropy and want to ensure comes to life in this idea. And then we learned what they learned in the room, what we our strengths in this space and what we can do and how we can meet their idea and where we can't. And so it was an opportunity, all the things for me, what I see as an opportunity in doing these more, and we're talking about doing more of these, is you see the body language, you see the family dynamics, you see who speaks more and who speaks less, and who needs to be more involved because of who they're encouraging to speak up. You understand what they care about and what their limitations are. And you do all that in a space where your academic partners get to see how this works, and how that it's not something that we can go from, 0 to 1,000 in 3 seconds, right? And so we're in the phase right now where we're dreaming within the organization now to determine, okay, what is the infrastructure needed to support this idea? And I think for me, those components of what we learned is something we want to kind of bottle and see if we can do more of them.
Well, what's fascinating about it is like so much of fundraising. I mean, it's very relationship driven, but oftentimes, we talk about like the menu of options, right? At this level versus this level versus this level, or you've got sort of different products or offerings that you're selling, if you will. For example, we have a professorship. We need this much money to secure the professorship. Who might be a good prospect? Let's engage them and see if we can round out the professorship. That's like polar opposite than like blank slate. Let's dream
Right.
together. But while dreaming, hopefully align with what we're actually trying to do as a university, and we don't end up way out in right field, off track, if you will. And sort of how do you dream big, but also not then end up with random passion projects that aren't, connected with your
Right.
priorities.
Well, and I think the responses there, I just want to be, these types of conversations happen at the $5 million level and higher, right? And so it's definitely in the space of principal gifts that we do these types of sessions, both, well, now I guess we can add doing them with a family, and when we do it with academic partners. So that's number one. I think number two is the component that is integral to our success in how we do it here is aligning our strengths with the donor's passion so that we can ignite transformational philanthropy. So it's not about our things that we have never done before tied to their passions equals transformational philanthropy. We want to make sure when we're in these conversations that we know we can deliver because it's an area that we are strong in. And an added bonus, it would be not always the case, but an added bonus would be we have the infrastructure or the beginnings of infrastructure already in place. So we're not starting like from scratch. Now, there will always be those types of transformational gifts where we literally build it from zero. But we often start with kind of making sure we do a landscape review of our existing infrastructure, our assets in these types of conversations. So if we already have existing infrastructure, we make sure to bring it into the conversation so that they see that we're not starting from zero. So I just want to make sure I highlight it's definitely at a higher threshold number, and we're definitely wanting to explore our strengths and tying them so that we're not often running on a pet project that 2 years from now we don't deliver on because the academic partners moved on, or it's no longer a passion and it's no longer an area that we care about. It has to be a strength, and it has to be something we are committed to doing.
I love that. And I think, yeah, for, at the $5 million level, there just aren't that many $5 million gifts per year anywhere, right? And so for most folks listening, they're not going to be in the room where it happened, if you will, when those sorts of discussions are being had. I'm going to have some, I'm sure, teammates upset with me if I don't at least ask you a little bit about football. I didn't want this to be the football podcast, the Amanda podcast, but at the same time, can I ask, and you can also just plead the fifth or respectfully decline to answer any of these questions, but can you harness Coach Prime as a development partner? I mean, people talk about how important it is to collaborate with the dean of this or the dean of that and getting people aligned around the mission. He's got a lot going on, but have you been able to collaborate at all?
I will defer only because I don't have the pleasure or benefit of working with him as closely as my peer and colleague in athletics who does our fundraising. But from what he shares with me, he is a great partner, and he is committed to the university through and through. Definitely committed to football and making sure that program becomes is the program that he believes in and that we believe in, and committed to athletics. So I definitely, from what I hear from my peer, he is a great partner.
Fantastic. And I would imagine from just an overall Right, stewardship experience. You mentioned the importance of stewardship. I'm sure there's very strong synergy and connection between things you can do around the game day experience, for example, just given all that momentum for your broader donor pool, whether it's specific or not.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for all the reasons, football has helped the university for sure. For advancement, we definitely have been able to see the stewardship and cultivation opportunities that we get through just the experience. I mean, folks are coming in for the games in ways that I am still excited every football season to kind of see all the nameplates that are showing up in Boulder. And so we have been able to leverage it for cultivation and stewardship. And we are actually right now planning for our next football season. And we are thrilled to see the folks who have said yes to coming to the game and being our guest.
Amazing. I love that. Before I start to wrap the episode, I've got to ask you, tell me about this 7-year-old. What should our audience know?
Oh, so I have a 7 and 15-year-old. I will describe them both as they are very much, they are independent women. They will tell you what they think. Our 7-year-old, she actually, because she's very interested in your day, she's one of the kids who will be like, so tell me how your day went. So for her, she's very interested in what's going on in your life, and she hopes you care about her day too. And so for her to hear that I was on a podcast, which she now understands what that means because I had to explain it to her yesterday, she was excited. So I told them as I was getting on the call, please no calls while I am doing this podcast. And she did a heart on the message. We have a family group text, and so she responded with a heart. So very much interested in what's going on in your life. I care about that.
Let her know she got a shout out. I'm sure she'll enjoy it. And if you're listening, you should be proud of mom. I know you are. Tell me just a little bit about where the team is. Are you hiring? What should folks be thinking about as it relates to possible career paths at UC Boulder?
Yeah, we are hiring. As I mentioned, we're in the pre-launch phase of our first comprehensive campaign. This is an exciting time, as we already discussed, to be in Boulder and to be at CU Boulder. And so we are, first and foremost, looking for people who are just good humans, good, care about their fellow team member, first and foremost. And then really folks who are just, willing to challenge norms, question how we've done things in the past, really people who are energized by momentum and wanting to take things to the next level. And so, I take calls all the time. Quite honestly, people reach out to me on LinkedIn or by email, and I just had one yesterday where it was just an informal virtual coffee. We are very much interested in bringing great people to Boulder. We're committed to being a great place to work and a great place to give.
And you called out your values of joy, collaboration, impact, and excellence. I like that.
Yes. Yeah. Those are foundational to how we go about the work. Collaboration being a huge component of that. But we enjoy having fun. So joy is important. And of course, the work needs to be at our best, which is at the excellence component. And we want to make sure our work is having an impact, transforming the university and society. So we would be delighted to talk to anyone who's interested in coming to Boulder.
Well, Amanda shared that she is the person that is inclined to reach out to the guest of the podcast and say hello. She just invited you to do the same. I'll share amanda.hopkins@colorado.edu. Hope you don't mind. I know you're on LinkedIn as well. And I hope you get a couple folks reaching out to you, Amanda.
We would love it. I would love it. I enjoy mentoring, which is how I got here in life. And so for me, not necessarily mentoring is the part of what we're just talking about, but just meeting new people and helping them decide where they want to be next. I'm committed to that and to the industry in that way.
Well, it's part of the reason why we do this podcast. We love elevating voices like yours. Thank you for sharing your story and wishing you the absolute best, and excited about, some of the work our teams are going to accomplish together.
Yeah, look forward to it, Brent. Have a great day.
Well, with that, I'll conclude today's episode featuring Amanda Hopkins, who serves as Associate Vice Chancellor for Development at the University of Colorado Boulder. Thank you, Amanda, and take care, everybody.